My name's Nick Craig and I've been working with Scott Sports for 15 years, and I'm lucky enough today to be here at Jay's Cycle Shack.
Hi, my name's Ash. I'm workshop manager at Ferrybridge. So here behind me I've got the Axis Team Issue Spark RC my year 2022.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a couple of things about the adjustable headset geometry in this bike, please?
Yeah, so compared to the previous Spark, the old Spark was a 68.5 degree head angle. We've now got a 67.2 as it's delivered, but really quite simply by undoing the stem here, lifting it up, no tools required to push out these cups, rotate the bottom one 180 degrees, relocate, rotate the top one, relocate, and you've got the perfect trail bike for the weekend with a 66 degree head angle.
Awesome. So you can use this bike pretty much all year round in all seasons for a normal trail bike and also race use. Where does this sit in the quality level on the scale of all the Sparks?
It's kind of mid-range, so we're using our HMF carbon fibre, front and rear, so the whole bike. The frame, whenever we quote frame weight on a Scott trail bike or race bike, we always include the shock and the hardware, so this is 2,150 grams. The bikes above this, this bike retails at 4,600, the RC Team Issue Axis. The bikes higher up the range are HMX, they would be 1990 grams, and the very lightest is the SL bike using our nano resin, nano fibre, super duper carbon fibre, and that weighs in at 1870, including all shock and hardware. So we also, in the trail version of this bike, so this is 120mm front and rear travel. The DC version or trail bike has 130mm fork, giving it a slightly slacker head angle. And those bikes we do HMF front end with an alloy back end, and we also do with a hidden shock and all the features that you see here. We also have a full alloy frame that's under 3, it's 2,990, and it's an amazing bike for the price.
Awesome. So I can see mostly SRAM taking control of this bike. Is there any key additions that you've made to this bike that wouldn't come as a standard issue bit of kit?
Yeah, so at this price point with the full carbon, the one thing that it didn't have was a dropper seat post. You can see I've added a SRAM Axis dropper with the new twin lock lever over here, so we've got a much more ergonomic and sensitive to touch. That means that when you've got it through to full lockout, when you press the release button, if you press it like you press the old twin lock lever, it will spring back in one movement all the way back to full travel. You soon get used to just touching it softly if you want to come back to TC mode, which is basically reducing the rear travel to 85mm, and it basically makes the bike sit up into a climbing position. So when you get used to that flicking through, it becomes really easy and sensitive. What that works really well with is the Axis controller that comes with this dropper. In previous years it was a challenge to make that fit with the twin lock, and it was quite complicated. If you then want to add, say, a Syncross cable operated or Fox dropper seat post to this, it's really quite simple. You can buy the third lever, which would come on bikes that have already got that dropper, which sits underneath the twin lock, and it actually bolts onto the underneath. The cable would go into the head tube, it would feed down here, and where the Axis hatch for the shock is, we then push the cable up through, and moulded into the carbon frame is actually a place for that cable to be threaded through so it doesn't rub on the internal shock.
Awesome. So obviously looking at the bike, it is a very, very clean and sleek looking bike. I've also noticed that there's a lot of cable tidying work going into the handlebars. Is there a couple of different levels of the carbon handlebar that you do offer with this bike?
Yeah, so on an RC bike, what you're looking at here is with this new geometry, so compared to the old bike, we've got a slacker head angle, we've got a longer top tube and a steeper seat angle. What that means is when you're actually stood up on this bike, it will feel the stack and reach is very similar to the old bike, but when you sit down with the same position, I've got this seat pin came out of my old bike, and it's in exactly the same position, and when I sit on this bike I'm riding in a more modern, more upright and slightly wrist bent position, which I I've got to say I've been racing this bike since May now, and I jumped onto my old bike the other week, and I thought I've got to make it feel like this bike. You know, this new modern position felt great. What we've done with the stems, your question about the options and the cables, the different options with the stems, what we've done is on a small bike we spec a 50mm stem, and on this bike it's a 60, so the previous Spark had a 70. So with the slacker head angle we need a shorter stem to make it feel responsive, yet we've still got a similar reach. To do that and make it work really well, on a 50 we have -14, on a 60 we have -12, 70 is -10, 80 is -9 and 90 is -8. And what that means is the stem does that. So we're always keeping it at the same stack height. You may have seen Nino Schurter and his super extreme one piece, so this is a two-piece setup on the sort of mid-range bikes. The further you go up the range you get into the Fraser integrated cockpit, which is one piece, and you know, we do that in a -40 for Nino and Lars Forster, -30 Andy Frischneck uses, and Kate Courtney uses a -20, and that's to get them into that super aggressive weight on the front wheel, World Cup racing position. When we talk about the DC trail bikes, the bars go from 740 wide to 760. We offer 3 different options on the stems, 1.5 level, which is like this, but all the stems are 0, so there's no negativity at all, they just all stay 0. What we do also offer for somebody that wants a higher, more relaxed position on that bike, we do a 3.0 level stem, which has you'll notice on the front here, it only has 2 bolts, so the handlebars have to go in through the side, and that restricts the rise available to the handlebar. So if you want to rise a bar on here, you can get the stem that is a 3.0 level, and it comes with the standard 4-bolt front plate, so you can put any bars in there.
Lovely. So this Spark is the 120mm travel option. What other travel options is there available with this bike?
So what we've done for the 2022 range is we've got the 120, which is now the World Cup race bike, or bike, you know, the RC level, which is more travel than other brands have on race bikes. But if you've seen Red Bull TV and if you've been to the World Cups and seen how big those rock gardens are, this is the amount of travel, and this bike gives amazing stability and confidence in those rock gardens. 120mm is definitely needed now, and it really works well. We offer in the DC version, it's 130mm travel fork, 120 at the rear, so it's only 10mm more travel in the front end. The position's different with the handlebars, and what's really cool is it's exactly the same frame. So the frame itself is no different. The only difference is we go to the alloy offerings when we get to the trail version.
So what's going on inside the bike?
Well, you can have a look at that on the augmented reality app. So we've got an app that will give you an X-ray view of what's going on inside here. Press play and it'll even push the bike through its movement, and you'll be able to see the linkage working with the shock. On this bike it's 28mm lower than previous, so lower in the centre of gravity, but yeah, have a look on that app.
So I can see on here you've got a bottle cage and a pump, so there's enough room for any additions that you need while you're out on a ride. Is there anything else that you take out with you on a ride?
Yeah, so I've got a bag that's actually neatly bolted to the underside of the saddle, which is a great thing for me, because you're not velcroing and onto a nice dropper post or a nice carbon seat post. So I really like the Syncross bolt-on bag. It's a nice addition. What's really cool about this bike as well, if you're going to use it for a marathon, which I did in August, I could fit 2 bottle cages to this. You can fit 2 bottle cages to a medium, large and extra large. On a small you can only fit 1 bottle. There's always 2 options as well, so you can have it high or low depending on your choice. And yeah, it makes it such a versatile bike. Awesome.
So you said that you did a marathon on this bike as well. What other places have you been on this? How capable is it?
For me, it's going to be all the bike I need. I live in the Peak District, and we've got some pretty chunky sized rocks, and I've absolutely loved this kind of travel bike, and I can't see any reason why my race bike can't be my trail bike, or my trail bike, if it was a DC, couldn't be my race bike.
Awesome. So definitely, just by looking, long gone are the days of super skinny tyres. These look quite similar to what I've got on my Enduro. So can you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, so what we've got is now the new Spark, we've got clearance for 2.4 tyres on a 30mm internal rim, so you know that, and that isn't tight, there's space there as well, so you've got room around here. And they've done that by changing the chain line from 52mm to 55mm, so it means that the chain ring is sat 3mm further this way, and that allows then for bigger chain rings. So not necessarily me, this is actually spec with a 32, but you can go up to 38 or even a 42 chain ring on this bike. The other, into the detail, we previously had bushings in here, and we've now got quite simple bearings, 6801s, two of in here, 6802 down at the pivot here, and then this big main pivot here has got some really beefy, to make this bike really stiff, it needs a big bearing in there, so we've got some 3727 by 6.5 with an extra seal to keep the dirt out. If you can't get hold of them from us, you'll be able to just put 7mm bearing in there, and that's a really nice thing for this bike.
Awesome. So one last question. Moving on to obviously getting parts. Parts are a little bit difficult to get hold of at the moment. I've noticed that now they're using the SRAM Universal neck hanger on there. It's good to see that being implemented into current bikes.
Yeah, so the UDH means that the component manufacturer, SRAM, can guarantee with our frames and our manufacturing that it's perfect. So we now have this universal dropout hanger, and as we launch new platforms, on mountain bike, it's on every platform, so it's really good to see. It's available worldwide from SRAM, and it's available from Scott as well. And this bike here that you're looking at, we talked at the beginning about what level is it, and it's a £4,600 bike, which is mid-range. We go up to £12,000 at the super high end with the SL. I normally ride something like a World Cup Axis Evo, and what's really great about that this year is I can't wait to get that bike because it comes ready to race. The wheels are super lightweight, 1350 grams. We're using the Silverton SL rim with a DT nipple and spoke and a DT 240 hub, so literally ready to go. And overall, one of the things that I noticed with this bike is this bike weighs 11.55 kilos, and it's a little bit heavy for the level of bike I normally ride, because I normally ride quite a higher spec than that. To pick it up, 11.5 kilos is 11.5 kilos, but when you ride the bike, as soon as I got on and pedal this bike, I could tell you the stiffness in this bike was incredible. So the power transfer, when I press on the pedal, I felt like I was going forward, and it felt like a bike that weighed 10.5 kilos, not 11.5. So can't wait for the new one, the Axis Evo.
Awesome.